Talking about chapter 20, section 1, one of my favorite chapters on personal finance. I think it's such an important and relevant subject that we need to learn about. And so the big idea here is that you and everyone around you are consumers, and that you are one of the most vital and important parts of our economy. We'll see. Of course, consumer, that's you, that's me. Disposable income, that's the fun part of money. Discretionary income, once more, a little more flexible, but we'll get into those definitions. What is consumerism? What is our obsession with stuff? Comparison shopping, which we all do. And then finally, warranty. So one of my favorites, when you buy something, hopefully it has a good warranty. So the big question, of course, what do you think? Are the rights of consumers more important than the rights of producers and sellers? Both have rights. And that's why when you buy something very expensive, if you're counting on a warranty, you need to read the fine print before you buy the item. For example, my mountain bike that I spent too much money on has a 5-year warranty on the frame, but that excludes dropping it off a building. If through natural use the frame cracks, which sometimes they do, they will replace it. But if it cracks because I drop it off a building or throw it out of a car or jump off a huge thing and crash and break every bone in my body, including the bike, well, that's not covered. But normal use, once more, covered. That's in the fine print that I also read before I bought the bike. So that's a right that I have as a consumer. Now, as a seller, they have a right to review that. So it goes. Now, consumer rights. To make good economic decisions as consumers, we have to be aware of our rights and our responsibilities. First off, a consumer is someone who buys a good or service, which, as you can see, is everyone. We all buy a good or a service at some point. And we do have rights in the free enterprise system. We have two types of income to spend. Number one is disposable income. This is the money left after taxes on it have been paid. This is different than discretionary income. Discretionary income is the money left after bills have been paid. So once more, disposable income is my net income after taxes, meaning this is what I have to pay my mortgage, my car payment, the baby payment, whatever it costs to birth that thing, and all of that. That's where bills go from. Discretionary income, that's the fun part. That's the money left after necessities have been bought and paid for. So that's excluding if you have sinking funds. Say you've got a gas account. Say I know that I spend about $150 a month on gas. That's roughly my gas budget for the month. So after that, I have about $400 a month to go out to eat. Like that's our dining. That's part of our discretionary income. That we don't have to do that, but we can. So this is the fun money after the bills have been paid. So maybe this is what you choose as your movie budget. Like maybe that's your thing. You love going to see all the movies in the theaters, and so you want to budget for that. This is where that money comes in. You've already fed yourself. You've taken care of medical bills. All things have been paid. Now here's what you have left to do fun things with. And this is kind of a motivator for a lot of people to get good paying jobs so they have more discretionary income. After all, we are a society based on consumerism. That means that we like stuff. We like to have stuff, the nice things. We want the MacBook Pros versus the Chromebooks because it's just cool. Or we want the nice mountain bike or the nice car because that's what we like. And there's nothing wrong with that. But we need to be educated as consumers about the purchases we make. And if you're like me, when it comes to spending money on fun things, I obsess. I read all the reviews. I talk to 1,000,000 people. What should I buy? I know already which kayak I want to buy. I'll have enough money by December. And so I'm already thinking and obsessing about it. But what's important is we also need to think about the things that are not as exciting. Like, to me, buying a new kayak is really exciting. Like, that's a fun thing. But it's not as fun to think about what kind of car seat I need for my baby. Like, okay, that's not as exciting, but it's important. I need a safe car seat. I need a good one that's going to work and last. It's not as exciting to think about, how are we going to pay for medical bills? Once more, that's not fun, but it's important. Because as consumers, once more, we need to be educated. Because after all, there are laws that protect us as consumers. You have a right to understand and be aware of what you're putting in your body. And that's why restaurants and grocery stores and food manufacturers are required to disclose what's in their products by law as per the Pure Food and Drug Act. But even private businesses have rights. And you have rights as a consumer of private businesses. For example, if you feel cheated by a business, you can contact the Better Business Bureau. They are an advocacy group which represents your interest as a consumer. Now, the Consumer Bill of Rights. What you can expect from someone that you purchase a product from. And if these rights are violated, then you certainly have the right to contact the Better Business Bureau. For example, you have the right to a safe product. This summer I was on my way back from Colorado, a tire blew on the interstate. It's a really scary situation when that happens. But luckily I was going slowly enough and driving carefully enough that I was able to safely get off of the interstate, put a spare tire on, and drive slowly and carefully to the nearest auto shop. I happened to be near Nashville, Tennessee, and so I got on my phone and I called my parents and I looked up what a good place to buy tires from. Now, I made a poor decision as a consumer. I bought used tires. Just friendly advice, don't ever buy used tires. It's something you always should buy new. Well, I bought used tires, and they did not balance them for me. I just assumed that was something that they would do, but they did not. And so that means that my car was wobbling all the way home, like 200 miles home. It was very dangerous and scary to drive unbalanced tires. It also means that one of the tires that I bought had a slow leak in the sidewall. Now, me being cheap and stubborn, I applied Aquaseal or some type of putty, like epoxy to the sidewall. And I thought, yay, problem solved. I found the leak. I used epoxy. I talked to several people about it. They were like, that's really unsafe. You don't need to do that. It's going to explode and get you really hurt. So, lesson learned, don't ever buy used tires. So I have a right to a safe product, though, as a consumer. So I called up the place where I bought the used tires from. And I said, you guys sold me a tire with a leak in the sidewall. It's unsafe. I can't use it. And even though it was a used product, he said, tell you what, bring it back and I'll replace it for you. Well, unfortunately, that was a 500-mile round trip to go back. So I said, I can't do that. You're 5 hours away from me. That's one way, 5 hours. I was like, I can't do that. And he just said, well, then I can't help you. And to be honest, he was right. He was within his rights to say that's the end of it, because how am I to prove anything different? So I also have a right to be informed about my product. As a responsible consumer, I should have checked the tires before I left. As soon as I saw it was wobbling, I should have turned right around and drove back. I have a right to be informed about my product. I certainly could have asked them more about what they were doing. Even though I sat and watched them, I still missed the fact that he didn't balance them, and I certainly missed the fact that there was a leak in the sidewall. And I have a right to choose. To be honest, I didn't have to go to the used place. I was being cheap. I shouldn't have. I should have known better. There was a perfectly good new car store right across the parking lot. The other side of the mall, wherever I stopped, there was a perfectly good new Firestone tire place. I should have chose them. But I had a right to choose, and I made a poor decision because that's the responsibility that goes along with the right. Finally, I have a right to be heard. Now, in that case, they were within their rights. I wasn't cheated. It was just a poor decision on my part. Were I cheated, then I certainly have a right to be heard. Oh my gosh. And there are agencies who have the responsibility to correct injustices, because after all, I have a right to redress. Meaning that if a business cheats me, then I can contact the Better Business Bureau. I can go to local media outlets. I can seek justice, even if they've not committed a crime against me. If they have violated my rights as a consumer, then absolutely, I have rights. Okay, so how are these rights protected? That's where it gets tricky. Is it criminal law? Is it civil law? And that's where, who should be the agency that defends me? And it will most commonly have to be you. The Better Business Bureau isn't looking after Sophia going, "Hi, Sophia, just wanted to call to see if your consumer rights have been protected today." No, that's not their job. She has to be an advocate for herself and defend herself and be prepared to read the fine print and deal with whatever she has to do to get her rights protected. Now, what responsibilities do we have as consumers? Because you see, after all, we have these rights, that also means we have responsibilities. We have to utilize smart buying strategies. That is, we should gather information about whatever we're going to buy. I tend to prefer to spend a little extra money for the higher quality product on a big purchase. Of course, I don't always make the smart decisions on smaller purchases, and I should. So gathering information is an extremely important step in making financial decisions. Secondly, utilize advertising carefully. What is the source of your information? It's just like making political decisions. Consider the source of the information. When Rachel Carson published Silent Spring, we were talking about that in American history. The chemical companies that produced the pesticides that she was talking about said, "Oh no, our pesticides are fine." Well, that was what their advertising said. Our pesticides don't hurt anybody. Well, consider the source, because the science confirmed that in fact DDT does harm us. Now, think of cigarette companies. The big tobacco manufacturers lost a lawsuit about 15 years ago, and that lawsuit required them to disclose information about how their product can cause cancer. And that was the result of a decades-long case where big tobacco did not want to have to put that label on their product, but now they do. And then finally, you have to determine the best value. Well, unfortunately, value doesn't always mean price. What does value mean? Well, you could buy a car out of a junkyard for $500, and it may get you killed when the engine catches on fire. Been there, done that. I had a Peugeot. It's an old French car, and it caught on fire on me. Twice. Because I was too stubborn. To dispose of it, and I was too cheap to be able to do anything about it. So the first time I stopped, I put out the fire, I continued. It also had a sticky gas pedal, meaning that if you floored it, it would get stuck with the pedal on the floor. And so I had to do a few emergency stops at 105 miles an hour. I'll tell you what, that's scary. Where I had it floored and then it wouldn't unfloor. I even tried with my foot to grab it, but you're going 105 miles an hour, and that's deadly. And so I had to turn off the ignition, force it off the road, which is not a good situation. Anyway, so value is not always price. You have to think very carefully, what does value mean to you? And after all, comparison shop. That's why I had you do the project about the car, because the car is one of the bigger, more important decisions that you're going to make in the next year. And so hopefully you did a lot of good comparison shopping. That is the best product for the best price. But once more, best, that's a subjective term. What does best mean to you? That may mean you're perfectly satisfied with a safe clunker. As long as it runs, that's all you need. Best to you may mean fancy new car. And hey, if that's something you place a high value on, that's you. But just make sure that you do that as an educated decision instead of an impulse. Because after all, there's no agency out there to say, oh, I'm sorry you made a poor purchase decision. Pat, pat, pat. We're going to take care of that for you. That's not how life works. We had a student who spent too much on the DC trip and unfortunately ran out of money. And we took care of it since, we're kind of like your parents. But that person got in some trouble because, after all, they made some poor decisions. And Ms. Cottle tried to take the student to the stores that they had bought the items from, and the store said, no, we don't do returns. Do you see the sign on the front? Can't help you, sorry. And that was just a poor decision that person made. Life lesson, hopefully. Can't say we'll never do it, right? So when we're buying, we have to look at a number of items. Is it brand name versus generic? Is that important to you? Is that important to the quality of the product? For me, name brand mac and cheese, that's important. Because off-brand mac and cheese doesn't taste right. That's just me. However, it may not be important to you. But when it comes to coffee, no offense, Bryce, I buy the cheap stuff. Because, well, coffee's coffee. I love it. I do go for the fancy stuff every now and then. But for my daily intake, which we're looking at that giant mug over there, daily intake, the cheap stuff's fine. But again, what does value mean to you? Is it name brand? Is it generic? What are the costs? What are the benefits? Because after all, there are certain items that I do certainly only buy name brand for. And there are some that I only buy generic for. There are some other responsibilities that I have as a consumer. If you are making a big purchase, it is essential that you keep any warranty information. I'd like to say I'm somewhat of an expert on this. I've dealt with warranty issues with my kayaks. I've dealt with warranty issues with my mountain bike, with my car. You just need to be good at this. This is something that is part of being a grown-up making big decisions, is that you keep warranty information, you read the fine print on the big products that you purchase, and that you understand what rights you have as a buyer, but that also you respect the rights that you have as a seller. For example, REI used to have a policy that they would return any item, no question, forever. It's a pretty sweet policy. Like, you could have a 10-year-old backpack, get sick of it one day, it's been in your closet forever, and you could take it back to them and they would give you full price. Now, imagine the problems that arose from that. They eventually changed the policy to now it is a 1-year policy. You have 1 year to bring an item back, no questions asked. People still abuse that. And so, unfortunately, we have to consider human nature, that we're all cheap and that we're all going to look for ways to scheme. And we do have to respect the rights of certain businesses. If you buy a pair of shoes and they last you a year, that's fair. If you buy a pair of shoes and they last you 5 months, then maybe that's on them. Unless you like running around in fires or something. Unless you just like destroying things, like a pair of shoes should probably last more than 5 months. But you should be satisfied if they last a year, and that's fair. So you have to be reasonable when dealing with sellers also. But now, if you don't report problems, they're never going to get solved. If you don't advocate for yourself, other people aren't going to advocate for you. Right now, your parents, your teachers, your adults in your life are hopefully advocates for you. But you can't always count on that. And you probably You can't always count on that now. You have to advocate for yourself. Other responsibilities. So what happens if you buy a really fancy backpack, talking like the $300 models. You know, by the way, they sell bulletproof backpacks now in response to the school shootings. That is something that is a thing. So it's a $300 backpack. You can buy it. It's bulletproof. You can apparently shoot an assault rifle at it and it will stop the bullet. So let's say you bug your parents and go, man, I really need this $300 backpack to make me feel safer. Okay, well, as a parent, if that's something, you know, that's going to get you through the day, then we'll figure out how to make it happen. So you got your $300 backpack. You're telling all your friends, I'm bulletproof now. Check this thing out. Yay, you know. And then Alan's like, no way, that's not bulletproof. Bet you it is. $5. All right, cool. Well, I've got an AR-15 at home. Let's go test it out. Sweet. So, you know, you go home. I don't own an AR. I do not. But let's say Alan does fictionally. So you go test this thing out. You pull out your AR-15. You shoot the backpack. Boom, you know. Hole goes right through it. Well, that's a problem, right? that is a real problem. And it is the company's responsibility to make that right. Okay, so how are you going to make it right? Well, you're not just going to sit there. You know, they're not going to magically contact you and say, hey, Becky, I heard you bought one of our backpacks. I just wanted to see how it's working for you. Did you test it out? Is it bulletproof? Do we need to replace it? No, that's not their job. Your job is, number one, report the problem. Look up the manufacturer. Okay, LL Bean made the bulletproof backpack. Awesome, contact LL Bean. If you find yourself in the warranty process, do not attempt to fix the product for yourself. This is very important until you have clearly documented it. So I just broke my 7th kayak in 7 years, guys, yesterday. It was a bummer. I understood the warranty was expired this time. I've had them replaced before. The company I deal with, I like them because of their warranty policy. They will replace a boat if you break it in a year. This one, however, was out of warranty. So that's on me. I fixed it last night. Did a little bit of plastic welding, and you'll see it on my car soon. It's got this big patch on it from where I fixed it. Well, it's never going to be the same. It's going to break again. Eventually, I'm just going to have to replace it. So the ones I've had replaced by the manufacturer always asks me not to attempt to fix it until I've clearly documented and they have given verbal consent that they are ready for me to fix it. Fair enough. That's their policy. Finally, they ask that I go through the seller, which in the first go-round was Headwaters Outfitters in Rosman. In the second go-round was Appomattox Paddle Sports in Virginia. So in both cases, I had to contact the seller directly, talk to them on the phone, and say, hey, Tom from Appomattox Paddle Sports broke a kayak again. He's like, really, again? So he's like, okay, how'd this happen, blah, blah, blah. We go through the rigmarole, I document everything, and they finally fix it. So that's on me to have to do that. And then I keep a record of my attempts. I can show you this Google Drive folder of all of the records of all of the emails of these transactions. Because after all, companies are obligated to make it right if that's what their warranty policy is. But sometimes they're going to play the I forgot about it game. Sometimes they're going to drag their feet. And that's a technique on them to try to get out of this. Maybe you'll forget about it. Maybe you'll leave it alone. And finally, all of these communications I have records of. And this is just something about the warranty process. So, consumer responsibilities, hopefully it makes sense. Okay, so you're going to buy something. That's exciting. It costs more than money to buy something. Money is the representative of your effort, of your time. Part of your life is now translated to that money. And so you're going to spend part of your life on something. It's weird when you think about it that way. What does that mean? That means that there are factors involved in consumers' decision. Since we have scarce resources, then we have to deal with the income that we have and the limited time that we have. So, buying something. Number one, you have to decide. Do you want the thing? Great. What do you know about the thing? I mean, someday as a parent, I will be telling my kid this. Okay, you want the toy. That's awesome. What do you know about the toy? Okay. Is it what you've always wanted? Is it fun? Is this going to be just something you'll buy and be bored with? Okay, you really want the toy. Great. What are you going to have to do to get the toy? Does this mean chores? Like how many weeks of chores are you going to have to save up for? You know, we're going to do some kind of allowance thing. And so, okay, you're willing to save up for weeks and weeks and weeks. That's what you really want? Okay, that's what you really want. I went through this with my parents with my first Lego castle. I still have that castle. It is still assembled. And I put it together in 1990, and it is still assembled in my attic. And I'm actually going to bring and put it in here now that I'm having kids. So you'll see a Lego castle up here there. I put that thing together in the late 80s. Because I saved up an entire summer and worked my tail off as a kid in the late 80s to get that Lego castle. And because that meant so much to me that I had to work so hard to earn that thing, I still have it. Finally, it's an opportunity cost involved in any decision. So hopefully you know a little more about the process now.